Every time we went into the lots, there was this unexplainable feeling like we were being watched. You could just feel that there were eyes watching you. It's just unexplainable. Like there were always signs that we weren't alone. So my mom would always hate when we played in the lots. It was always rumored that there were bodies being dumped in those lots, and my mom hated that. And we start to see something blue. Come to realize, it looks like one of those tarps that you see on construction sites or, covering vehicles. And she says to my mom, she goes, "Is your name Jean?" My mom answered yes. She goes, "Boy, did your kid come close to getting killed."
There is an unwritten code in Brooklyn. You don't tell anyone else's stories, and you don't talk about anyone else's business. Every story I tell is mine. Locations, names, and specific details have all been changed to honor that code. This is Brooklyn Files, the real stories.
When most people think of Brooklyn, they probably think of concrete, bricks, pavement, because that's what it's mostly known for. I mean, who doesn't think of concrete jungle when they think of Brooklyn? It's pretty synonymous. But what a lot of people don't realize about Brooklyn is that it has a vast amount of marshes and wetlands. It has beaches, bays, inlets. And then you have open spaces that for one reason or another are undeveloped parcels of land. In Brooklyn, there are plenty of vacant lots, and you'll find these vacant lots, especially in coastal and marshy areas of Brooklyn. And some of these vacant lots are actually pretty massive, where weeds can grow as high as 10 feet. So keep in mind, as a poor kid growing up in Brooklyn, which I was, and when you don't go on vacations, and you never get to leave the 2 square miles that you're growing up in, which I didn't, this becomes your concept of the outdoors. So at the time we lived in the southeast corner of Brooklyn, this was in 1979, I'm around 10 years old. Where we lived, there was a very long and narrow basin. The basin's about 1.25 miles long, and it's surrounded by massive vacant lots. So we just called them the lots. As a kid growing up in Brooklyn and never getting to see an actual forest, you grow up thinking the lots are the forest. So as a curious and restless little boy, I would love playing in these lots with my friends, especially this one friend that I had. We'll call him Russell. Russell always wanted to play in the lots. We actually had a nickname for him. It was Lot Boy. No matter what time of day, no matter what time of year, Lot Boy wanted to play in the lots. Whether it was riding on bikes, on the trails, or hiking through the brush, there was something about this kid, I don't know what it was. He was an adventure seeker, like a real outdoorsy spirit. Like he just had to be in the lots to be happy. In fact, my mom would always tell me not to play with this kid, Russell. She knew that if I was out playing with Lot Boy, that I was out playing where she didn't approve of. So my mom would always hate when we played in the lots. She always thought it was dangerous because we always came home with ticks on us. Guaranteed if we were playing in the lots, my mom would end up having to spend like an hour after that plucking them off with a pair of tweezers and using matches so that she could burn them. And so she hated having to do that every time. I don't blame her. So anytime I left the house, she'd say, "No going in the lots. I don't want you in the lots." But I always ignored her because I loved playing in the lots, and there was this entire world in there that needed to be explored. In the lots, there were no adults, there were no rules. It was like we owned the lots, like we found it, claimed it, and settled in it. Like we felt like pilgrims discovering a new world, and it was our world. There were dangerous things in this world too. There was even a legend that wild dogs would roam those fields. So we always had to be on high alert walking through there. Although we never saw them, so I'm not sure that was actually true. And I remember always hearing the sound of pheasants that called the lots their home. They always made this certain sound that I could still picture in my head to this day. One of my most vivid memories I have of the lots was when I fell off my bike riding in there and I went sliding headfirst down this hill, like a 30-foot drop. And I basically got stabbed up my nostril with this long twig. And my nose was bleeding and I injured myself, but I had no idea that I'd gotten a twig up my nose that day that would stay there for a long time, till about a year later when I sneezed out this petrified piece of twig from my nose. It was gross. The lots were almost like an unofficial city dump, like people would illegally dump stuff there all the time. We would explore the lots for hours, and anything we found in the lots was ours. We would find everything you could imagine too. There was this infinite amount of things in the lots. We'd find discarded tools, magazines, a hairdryer. We'd find furniture, kitchen appliances, records. One time I found a bike and a blender. So I tried to make a motorcycle by taping the blender motor to the bike, but somehow that didn't work. I guess I didn't really understand the science behind a motorcycle. Another time we found a shopping cart filled with broken bowling pins and then a couple of broken bowling balls like lying about. So naturally we decided to make a bowling alley. It just so happened that we had found this discarded and disassembled above ground pool. So we raveled it out, rolled it out, made a bowling lane out of the metal, and we would bowl at our self-made bowling alley. We even found plywood and a broken chair, so naturally we made a hotel. My brother was our first customer. He spent some quiet time sitting alone reading a magazine. I think we charged him like 25 cents. And it was like we were building our own little city in the lots, like a little Vegas. And because there was this basin nearby, there of course was a small boat marina. And with that boat marina not too far, there were always fish being dumped in the lots as well. I'm not sure why people were dumping fish in those fields, but they always did it. But we would always come across a big wooden crate of discarded fish. And I remember the gut-wrenching smell, like something I'll never forget as long as I live. Flies would be everywhere, buzzing away, feasting on these dead fish. And we'd also find burned out cars. As kids, we didn't know this at the time, but looking back now as an adult, you come to realize they were more than likely insurance jobs, like pulled off by people who would probably burn their own cars when they didn't want it anymore, and then report it to the insurance company as stolen. But every time we went into the lots, there was this unexplainable feeling like we were being watched. You could just feel that there were eyes watching you. It's just unexplainable. Like there were always signs that we weren't alone. Like on more than one occasion, we would find a perfectly good car in the lots as if somebody drove it in. Then like 10, 15 minutes later, we would like circle back past that spot again, and then the same car would suddenly be on fire, which leads me to another reason why my mom didn't like us playing in the lots. So in 1963, when my mom and dad were first married, and before us kids came along, they were the proud owners of a newly constructed home. That was the first house that I ever lived in after I was born. This home happened to be not too far from where we currently lived at the time, near the lots. And the street where this house was had also been lots some 15 years earlier. When the builder was excavating for these homes, there were more than a couple of times there would be delays in the home building process when the excavators would turn up a body in that field. Then they would have to pause the work, get the cops involved, deem it an active crime scene. It was always rumored that there were bodies being dumped in those lots, and my mom hated that. So she was rightfully concerned about us going in there. So she would always tell me, like, stay out of there. I don't want you in the lots. But we'd go in the lots anyway because we loved adventure. But that was about to change that day. It was a Saturday in October, and me and my friend Russell, aka Lot Boy, were doing our usual thing, walking through the lots, and we're searching all around like we always did. And we'd probably been there for about 15 minutes or so and just kind of going around. And like I said, whenever you were in the lots, there would always be the presence of the smell of rotting fish. So it wasn't unusual for us to smell something after about 15 minutes of exploring around. So Russell and I, we start smelling that smell, something very rancid, something very putrid. And then we start noticing that buzzing sound of the flies. And again, not unusual at this point, till we continue walking towards this clearing, and we start to see something blue. Come to realize, it looks like one of those tarps that you see on construction sites or, covering vehicles. And as we're getting closer and closer, it starts to become more and more obvious that this tarp is shaped like a human body. My friend and I were exploring the lots. We smell this horrendous smell, which isn't unusual, but by this time, it's just a little worse than we're used to. We come to this little clearing and see what looks like a tarp. It's blue, it's shaped like a human body, and again, the smell is something you can't describe. Like, once I realized we're probably looking at a body, my stomach just could not handle any of it. The smell, the look. I turned around, I pointed away from my friend, and immediately I start hurling. The whole thing was just too much to handle, especially for an 11-year-old kid. Right then, I begin thinking my mom was right, we shouldn't be here. She always said, don't go in the lots, and I should have listened. It's like she was trying to warn me without giving me the gruesome details of what we could possibly encounter in this place, but we didn't listen, stupidly. We knew we needed to get out of there to tell somebody right away, so we start making our way in the direction that we came from. We finally get to the edge of the lots, and there's this car, and it's parked right where we'd entered the lots, and there was no one in it, but the trunk was left open, and we both noticed that this car was not there just 15 minutes earlier when we'd entered the lots. So when we walked by this car, we were a bit puzzled as to what it was doing there. And I immediately started to wonder if it had something to do with what we had just seen back there in the lots, if the person that drove that car was the same person responsible for what we just saw. Just as we get close enough to the car, suddenly this woman starts yelling at us from across the street in the townhouses from an open window, and we couldn't hear what she was saying, but she's waving her arms and she's yelling. And we assumed that maybe it was her car and maybe she was telling us to get away. It seemed that way. So we didn't stick around. We just had to tell someone what we saw. So we start running to my house. My mom immediately knows something's up. She could see the shocked look on our faces, and I could barely get the words out of my mouth that we're pretty sure we just discovered a human body. And my mom immediately calls the police. She tells them everything, about the tarp, the car. Surprisingly, there was no big interview with the police. They didn't even show up to our house. I guess maybe because of our age and the fact that we didn't see much. They just took the information. Then about maybe 10 minutes later, there was this big police presence around the area where my friend and I had entered and exited the lots. Soon there were lots of police cars and detectives and the city morgue on the scene down the street from us. And of course, my friend and I, we had to be nosy and watch along with everybody else in the neighborhood. As you would expect, there was this big spectacle, all the neighbors watching as the police investigated the scene that we'd found. So the next day comes, and the word on the block was that a woman on our street may have seen the body being brought into the lots earlier that day. We didn't give it a whole lot of thought at that point until later that evening. We get this knock on the door. My mom answers the door, and it was this lady. She looked around maybe 50 years old, and she says to my mom, she goes, "Is your name Jean?" My mom answered yes. She goes, "Boy, did your kid come close to getting killed." It's the day after my friend and I, we found this tarp and the police investigation was underway. And a woman comes to our front door, apparently a neighbor, a woman we've never seen. And she says the most shocking thing to my mom. She says, "Boy, did your kid come close to getting killed." So my mother's frozen by those words. Who could blame her? And she can't even muster up a sound after hearing that. So the woman continues to explain that the evening before, she had just finished walking her dog near the lots when she's up in her bedroom and looking out her window. And what does she see? Two boys entering the lots. They disappear for 20 minutes or so, obviously me and my friend. A while later, she sees a blue Chevy pull up with 3 men inside who exit the car. She says they looked shady as all heck. Like, according to her, these were not doctors and lawyers. Like, she said they all had that criminal look. Apparently, they began taking this blue tarp out of the trunk, 2 of them doing the work and the third one like being the watchman looking around, and they began carrying the tarp into the lots. So the woman said that the men then stayed in the lots for maybe 10 minutes, and then she saw my friend and I leaving the lots, and then we walked past the car. She said she attempted to warn us to leave the area by like waving and yelling out her window because of the men that drove up in that car. So she explained that she began yelling to us and like flailing her arms, trying to get our attention from the window, but that she could tell that we couldn't hear what she was saying and that we looked a little confused. And then we began running in the direction of home. So she just let us go. It was only seconds after that, after we walked away from the car, that she saw the 3 men emerge right behind us from the spot where we just emerged. And she could tell that the men had probably seen us, began following us in the lots, and were upset about us being there. When the men got to their car, instead of getting in, she saw one of them reach into the trunk and grab an object. Now, she said that she wasn't sure what it was, but she described it as like a wand or a club or something. But another of the 2 guys grabbed a rope. Then they started hustling in our direction as if they were convinced that we'd seen something and that they needed to intercept us before we told anybody. It was around when we arrived at my front door that the 3 men turned around, started walking away, and gave up. They went back to the car, they drove off. And it was shortly after that that she called the police to report what she'd just seen. That's when the operator told her that the police were already being dispatched to that area because of the call that my mom had made just moments before her. The whole time, we had no idea about the danger that had followed us out of the lots. Like, they were right behind us and we had no idea. The lesson here is like when your mom says, stay away from the lots, she probably knows something that you don't know, and she's probably trying to protect you from danger. So sometimes it's good to listen to someone that knows more than you. After that day, I never returned to the lots again. As for my friend Russell, Lot Boy, I finally stopped hanging out with him after that day. And I heard he moved to Michigan or something, probably 6 months after that incident. Maybe his parents wanted to find him a real forest and finally get him out of Brooklyn, which for that I can't blame them.